The federal government's ban on under-16s using social media has drawn criticism from one of the largest tech giants in the world. Live to federal political reporter Lucy Gray. Lucy, who is speaking out?
And it's billionaire Elon Musk, who isn't too happy about Labor's plan to block children from using platforms, including his own X and others like Instagram, Facebook and Snapchat. Responding to a post the Prime Minister made yesterday on X, announcing Labor would be introducing legislation to make a minimum age of 16 law, Mr Musk said it seems like a backdoor way to control access to the internet by all Australians. It's been viewed more than 20 million times. Among them is Senator Pauline Hanson, who pointed out there's a 24-hour period to respond to the legislation. Considering this bill places the onus on platforms to stop kids from setting up accounts, a lack of support from the boss of X really doesn't bode well for the government. Despite this, it's sticking to its guns.
But the point is that the laws do actually put an obligation on the social media companies to take steps to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
They have to do what this legislation requires them to do, and there's an expectation of them to step up.
Both major parties want this legislation passed within the week before Parliament rises for the year.
Brazilian police say President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva could have been killed before his inauguration in 2023.
Viva o Brasil e viva o povo brasileiro.
They uncovered a military plot to kill the then president-elect days before he took office and stage a coup. 5 people were arrested on suspicion of being linked to the plan. The army confirmed current and retired military officers were arrested, including one who was a member of former President Jair Bolsonaro's cabinet. Documents seized by police show how the plan was to shoot or poison Lula and his vice president-elect, put retired army generals and other officials in charge, and then hold new elections. They were also planning to kill a Supreme Court justice who had investigated Bolsonaro, police say. Lula defeated Bolsonaro in the 2022 election. The former president has never recognized his defeat and is currently being investigated for his alleged role in encouraging riots in Brasilia on January 8, 2023. One source told Reuters a police investigation that's about to wrap up will find Bolsonaro conspired to engineer the attempted coup after losing the election. He's not commented publicly on the allegations.
Jesus, also known as AI Jesus, as per reports, through an innovative installation. According to reports, St. Peter's Chapel in Switzerland has installed this so-called brand new AI Jesus in what is being dubbed as a breakthrough in generative AI. Scientists and theologians of Lucerne University have teamed up to create a holographic Jesus powered by AI. And what's more, the AI Jesus reportedly talks back and offers advice. The installation was first launched in August, in which visitors can also ask questions about faith, and the AI responds based on training from the New Testament as well as other religious texts. This is reportedly part of an art project which translates to God in a machine.
In a dramatic escalation of tensions, Iran has announced the activation of advanced uranium enrichment centrifuges, directly challenging the international community's oversight of its nuclear program. Tehran has asserted that the steps are in accordance to its national interest, but the West fears that Iran is actually building a nuclear bomb. But what really is the truth? Our next poll gets you the details.
Iran is turning up the heat. In defiance of the UN's nuclear watchdog, Tehran has activated advanced centrifuges, intensifying fears of a nuclear arms race. This bold move comes after the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, censored Iran for its lack of cooperation. So, what is this advanced centrifuge? These new generation centrifuges spin uranium gas at a very high speed. These sophisticated machines can rapidly produce enriched uranium suitable for both peaceful energy production and potentially nuclear weapons. The IAEA recently called out Iran for failing to explain uranium particles found at 2 secret sites. Iran dismissed the criticism as politically motivated, with Tehran suggesting negotiations with the West remain possible but on borrowed time.
All our efforts and our emphasis in our talks were to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to do its technical work away from the destructive and evil pressures of some parties.
My idea is to continue this and to move, and by moving step by step and getting concrete things, again, I take the point and I think it's very important, and getting concrete results, maybe, just maybe, the trajectory can be less confrontational and more constructive.
Israel, a staunch critic of Iran, praised the IAEA's resolution, calling for stronger action to halt Tehran's progress. Earlier this month, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, hinted the country might reconsider its nuclear weapons policy if it faces existential threats. The 2015 nuclear deal limited Iran's nuclear activities, but the US withdrawal in 2018 triggered Tehran to scale back commitments. Now, with advanced centrifuges in operation, experts warn Iran could produce weapons-grade material in just weeks, a fear expressed by the US earlier this year. This latest move puts the region and the world on edge, as Tehran's defiance raises the stakes in an already volatile situation. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in the Russia-Ukraine war, we're being joined by Mr. Dmitry Babych, who's a deputy foreign editor at the KPRU News. He's joining us from Moscow. Mr. Babych, thank you very much indeed, sir, for speaking to us here in WION. And let me in fact start off by asking you this. You know, the address by Vladimir Putin to the Russian nation, where he came out and said that the war in Ukraine is now pretty much going global. And he also warned the Western nations that if they are supplying weapons to be used inside the Russian territory, then those Western nations could actually be struck as well. Do you think Vladimir Putin has the intention to strike any of these other Western NATO nations who are supplying weapons to Ukraine anytime in the near foreseeable future?
I don't think anyone wants a global war. I think both sides in this conflict between Russia and the West, they both hope that the other side blinks first. So I don't think Putin has the intention to strike any country in the West, and culturally Russia feels a strong affinity to West European nations and also to the United States. We have more than millions of our people living in the United States. So Putin doesn't want a global war. But please put yourself in our position. Western nations are giving weapons to this madman in Kiev, who targets these missiles at cities in Russia. Bryansk, Kursk, these are major cities, ancient cities, deep in Russian province. So how can Putin react? He tries to scare the West from doing this, to dissuade the West from crossing a very dangerous red line.
Right.
That is his message.
Now, the Ukrainians have used the British-given Storm Shadow missiles and the American-supplied ATACMS. They've struck targets inside of the Russian territory. Now, tell us, this is a situation where the possibility of a miscalculation is very real. What do you think is the American calculation here? Why do you think they are looking for an escalation? What do you think the West hopes to derive out of it?
Unfortunately, the motives of the West are not logical, they are not material. I mean, for many years, our President Putin thought that the motivation of the West was material. So Russian elite, including Putin, tried to be friendly to the West. We tried to make Russia economically attractive, selling gas at cheap prices, building at our own expense gas pipelines and oil pipelines to Western nations. Now I think that the motivation of the West is ideological. They want their terrible ideology, gender ideology, this woke ideology. They wanted to win in the world.
Right.
And they view big countries such as Russia and China as major impediments. So as any totalitarian ideology, this ideology is prone to adventurism. They think that they have the wisdom of the world in their minds, and for that reason they're sure we will blink first, and they will have Ukraine winning this war. Even if you consider Russia an aggressor, I don't consider Russia an aggressor, but even if you think so, imagine what would happen if after the United States made an aggression against Iraq or against Libya, some other country would sell missiles to hit a U.S. territory. And it would hit it several times with thousands of people dead. What would be the reaction? The world would be, exploding in flames. I think everyone understands. The same story with Russia.
All right, I think you've made your point there. We're completely out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dmitry Babich, for joining us and getting his dark perspective there.
In the city of Dnipro last night, the missiles rained down. Multiple streams that kept on coming. But these weren't ordinary missiles, and the attack has taken the conflict to a whole new level. In a televised address, Vladimir Putin confirmed Russia had fired a new hypersonic medium-range ballistic missile, a response to what he called escalation from the West. At first, Moscow wouldn't comment on the reports it had fired a new missile. Its foreign ministry spokeswoman was interrupted mid-briefing by a caller who could be heard telling her to stay quiet. But the Kremlin is silent no longer, even threatening a similar attack on any country whose weapons are being fired on Russia. That includes the UK.
We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our facilities. And in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will respond decisively and reciprocally.
This was apparently the provocation. Ukrainian strikes on Russia's Kursk region using British Storm Shadow missiles. That's after other assaults from Kyiv involving American missiles. In an interview with Sky's Mark Austin, an accusation from Russia's ambassador to the UK.
Britain and UK is now directly involved in this war because this fighting cannot happen without without NATO staff, British staff as well.
But you are using
plans.
Chinese dual-use technology. You're using Iranian missiles. You're using Iranian drones. You're using North Korean troops. So are you saying all those countries are now directly involved too?
On that subject, I can say easily that we have plenty of mercenaries from different countries that are fighting right now on the side of Ukraine. So what's the matter?
It's that kind of reasoning Russia hopes will force the UK to back down. But there was no sign of that earlier.
The front line is now less stable than at any time since the early days of the full-scale Russian invasion in February 22. And we've seen in recent weeks a very clear escalation from Putin and his forces.
For now, Ukraine's allies are still calling the Kremlin's bluff, but the threats keep on coming. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
方呼吁有关各方切实尊重叙利亚的主权、安全和领土完整，立即停止对叙利亚的非法军事行动。外国军队必须尽快结束在叙利亚的非法军事存在。中方重申，有关国家应立即解除对叙利亚的单边制裁，立即停止非法掠夺叙利亚的资源，为叙利亚经济恢复发展创造有利条件。
В ответ на применение американского и британского дальнобойного оружия 21 ноября текущего года российские вооруженные силы нанесли комбинированный удар по одному из объектов оборонно-промышленного комплекса Украины. В боевых условиях было проведено в том числе и испытание одной из новейших российских ракетных систем средней дальности. В данном случае с баллистической ракетой в безъядерном гиперзвуковом оснащении. Мы считаем себя вправе применять наше оружие против военных объектов тех стран, которые позволяют применять свое оружие против наших объектов. А в случае эскалации агрессивных действий будем отвечать также решительно и зеркально. Об этом рекомендую серьезно задуматься и правящим элитам тех стран, которые вынашивают планы использовать против России свои воинские контингенты.
The UK Labour government is trying to impose these massive inheritance taxes on farmers. And the farmers, thankfully, are not having it. They have stormed the streets of London yesterday in protest. They're still there today. The plan is to target farmers that valued over 1 million euros, okay, all these farms. They want to impose the government wants to impose a 20% inheritance tax beginning of April of 2026. Now, the claim is that farmers have been, monopolizing land and that they've inherited, not giving new young farmers a chance to buy land. In reality, they're trying to take land from farmers and redistribute it under the guise of a tax penalty, forcing generational farmers back on the market at discounted rates. I mean, this is crazy. But it's not unique to the UK. It's becoming increasingly more prevalent in the United States, with a charge led by Democrats. Tony Kinnett, investigative columnist at the Daily Signal, and Patrick Dornson, the common sense cowboy. Patrick, we could use some common sense in Great Britain right now because they're about to not have food.
Yeah, well, you know something? Dwight D. Eisenhower, when speaking to a bunch of farmers back in the 1950s, said, farming's pretty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from a cornfield. And that's what it is in England and Washington and Paris and everything else, is you got a bunch of bureaucrats and politicians trying to dictate farm policy. Now, in this case, they talk about keeping young people out of farms. Young people don't want to go work on farms. It's too hard. And the second thing is, the only people who are going to work on farms are usually the kids of farmers. So once again, we have the morons of this world trying to regulate something like farming. They tried it in Holland, they tried it in France, and what did they get? Nothing but a bunch of John Deeres clogging their streets. And we need to do more of that here, too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But also in Berlin, which is crazy, the police chief, is telling Jews and gays to essentially hide their identity or avoid Arab populations, saying, quote, I would advise people who wear a kippah or are openly gay to be more careful. There are certain neighborhoods where the majority of people of Arab origin live who also have sympathies for terrorist groups. Tony, isn't it funny that anywhere Muslims are in the minority, they scream about minority rights, and anywhere they're in the majority, there are no minority rights?
Well, of course not. I mean, we've seen this since all the way back in the Crusades. The very first Islamic caliphate, the very essence of Shia philosophy is to slaughter anyone who won't bend the knee to their radical form of Islam. And so we've seen this throughout history. I do think it's kind of funny that when it comes to, like you said, any other minority, you talk about protesting against the government, that, the Brits used to make Sten Mark II submachine guns in their garden sheds. Oh, heaven forbid that happen. But, if Muslim groups want to prowl through the streets, these Shia groups, and go after Jews or individuals who are gay or whatever else, that's totally fine. That's just kind of like a religious in context conversation.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Cory Booker, Patrick, is starting to sound an awful lot like RFK. Roll it.
There are ingredients in our foods that should not be there. Chemicals that are linked to cancer and hormone disruptions. Many ingredients that are banned in other countries. Our food system hurts everyone now. These big companies have controlled our policy in Washington for too long. We need everyone to join our effort, to join this coalition. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. This isn't a partisan fight.
I mean, it was until Trump won.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my advice to Robert Kennedy Jr. is keep a safe distance from Democrats and skunks. Number two, politicians like Cory Booker, he's up for re-election in 2026. Trump did very well in New Jersey, so he's going to do anything to kiss Trump's backside or kiss RFK's backside and say, I'm with you. Now, you're going to hear something from me right now that's going to be revolutionary. Cory Booker is now the first official candidate for the 2028 nomination for the Democrats for president, because there's going to be two kinds of Democrats running. There's going to be people like that Governor Pritzker, who looks like Jabba the Hutt, and he's going to run on the resistance. And then you're going to have guys like Cory Booker who are going to say, I'm going to burnish my bipartisan credentials. Well, guess what? Neither of them are going to work.
Well, yeah, this is why we have you on, Patrick. I got to leave it right there. Tony, Patrick. Nice new hat, by the way, Patrick.
You bet. Thanks.
All right.